Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord. Welcome to the guide for Say Halo, the latest produce mode released at the tail end of 2024 in Enza Shiny Colors. This produce mode is built around the concept of creating custom units. By progressing through each season, you boost the strength of your newfound unit, building notoriety while massively increasing your stats across the board. By the time you're done producing your new unit, the idol you are working on will have the ability to change her link appeals to match parts of the idols you selected for her. In terms of functionality, the mode is a hybrid of Step, alongside some aspects of Grad. You'll be gathering points like Step to spend on stats and abilities, while collecting tokens known as Advice from the idols along for the ride to spend on specific types of training. First, let's go ahead and talk about supports. Generally speaking, bringing along your best supports is the easiest to do early on. Pay close attention to the main attribute your idol works with, and fill out your roster from there. For those looking to make the most out of this mode specifically, there's a couple things you want to be on the lookout for. Stat uncaps is the first thing. Of course, any card that is upgraded to 3 stars has access to uncaps, listed at the bottom of their skills page. But in addition to this, certain uncaps that happen to raise all parameters are generally seen as a good thing to bring along. They're very efficient because when you do this mode correctly, you'll be building up SP pretty quickly. And so, spending your SP early on stat uncaps is super ideal. Stamina Masteries. If you are wanting to take a bit of a more basic approach to the mode, supports that keep your stamina high will let you take better advantage of the weeks where training is preferred. Resting is as wasteful as always. Excellent Boost and Perfect Mastery. These two types of masteries can bolster how many stats you gain from rooms, which can go a long way in regards to the amount of points you'll be able to spend. Finally, we have Advice Masteries. While very new and limited in quantity for now, Advice Masteries help increase the odds of getting specific advice from the support in question. The strongest version of this only exists on a limited Hazuki, but perhaps more cards will receive this type of mastery later. Now, as for EX skills, there's a couple different options that people have been working with. The classic is, of course, as always, room stay masteries, things that allow you to lock a character into a specific room more often. But what also has become very popular recently is the Idol's Bond EX skills. As it turns out, the higher your bond is, the more likely it'll be that you get more advice from a specific support. So being able to raise that starting chance is super useful. So if you're somebody that wants to take a little bit more of a gamble on having some really good rooms with higher odds of it being stronger, at the cost of being way less consistent, you can try this out as well. Before you start the run, you'll have the ability to pick one book from your know-how. Just like with Step, you have the ability to gather up know-how from every other produce mode and then put it all together on one big book. So ideally, you'll gather up all your abilities from Grad, from Landing Point, from Wing, etc., and then convert it all into one big Step book. Then, you take that Step book into, say, Halo. Now, some abilities are worse or better in this mode, depending on the circumstance. For example, certain skills like the Stat Ups from Wing are a lot less useful, as well as the Affection Up. Stat types abilities are very useful, as well as positionals, but also SP is a little less useful here as well, because the book will only activate once. So many of these stats where the intent is to activate them as many times as possible doesn't really do anything here, outside of a very small boost at the beginning. So do keep that in mind when you're putting together all the abilities for your specific know-how. For the items, t-shirts, towels, charms, whichever you prefer, are generally going to be good for raising your idol's starting bond. Like we talked about earlier, the higher your idol's bond is, the more likely it is that they'll have access to Excellence, which can increase stat growth by 20% per Excellent, but it also increases the likelihood of them providing more advice, and having more advice is very helpful in this mode. Another item that is very popular and sees a bit of usage here and there are the lesson tickets. These allow you to re-roll all lesson rooms, so if there's a particular setup you're trying to force early on, these tickets can maybe help out. It is still random at the end of the day, so do not try to entirely hedge your bets on it, but maybe it will help out every once in a while. Normally, I would recommend the notebook since there are morning communes in this mode. However, due to the nature of this mode, morning communes are a lot less useful than you would think. You actually really don't need to pay attention to them at all. If you are really pressed to decide on a second item, you can choose to just bring the notebook anyway, but realistically, it actually does not matter if you're doing well on the morning communes or not. With that in mind, there's also a handful of items that are probably not good to bring, such as the perfume. Anything that has to really do with your starting affection is necessarily not going to be all that good, solely because getting affection is actually pretty easy in the mode once you know what you're doing. So anything to try to bolster the odds of that, like morning communes or just like starting things like the thank you letters, for example, don't bring those. They are absolutely a waste of time to use in this mode. Say Halo is broken into 3 seasons, with a couple small events at the end of seasons 2 and 3. Season 1 is 4 weeks long, and locks you out of several mechanics for this time frame. Your only options are to really just do auditions. There's nothing else to do, and by auditions I mean lessons, as everything else is locked out until Season 2. After you finish a lesson in Season 1, you'll be brought to this menu. This menu has access to every single idol in the game, and this is where you begin building your custom unit. Each support, or rather each idol, has access to 4 different types of advice. Each of the advice kind of correspond to a room, but not particularly. You have things like vocal, mental, things like idea, visual, dance, rest, so on and so forth. But every card is going to have 4. The only exception to this is if you bring a character that you are using currently as a support. In this case, they will get access to a 5th advice, which is known as the best advice. This acts as a wild card for any possible advice, and it's super good to have. Again, you can only get this if you select a character that you are bringing along as a support. So in this example, Kiriko is a support we have brought along, so we can get a best advice mastery from her. The same is true from Kaho, as well as Choco, but not true for characters like Juri or Amana. So it is recommended to bring along the characters that you're using as supports, or bring along characters that you want to use for your custom unit. By pressing the pink button, we can go ahead and add the character to our team. This will repeat on every week of the first season. You also have the ability to, once you've selected a character, you can choose to dismiss them from your team as well by clicking the blue button, if necessary. Starting out, I would recommend just bringing along as many characters as you want. There are some reasons as to why you would want to keep it low, but we'll get into that when we get into it. At the end of Season 1, you'll be presented your know-how book, and you will unlock every single ability that is available on the book. You'll receive all stat bonuses from the book, as well as every single ability, but you will notice that every single ability will now have a specific buff next to it. The higher the level of the ability that you bring along, the higher the discount will be. The lowest is at level 1, which is 5%. The highest is level 6, which is 50%. So while it is not entirely necessary to get all max level know-how, it will certainly go a long way in conserving points. Starting from Season 2, all options are going to be open now, both on the desk and in the planner. The stack of know-how is the same as it is in Step. You spend your points in order to unlock stats for yourself, stat uncaps, as well as abilities. This is where all your abilities will go, and it will show you what level they were and what % discount they have. But everything here is more or less the same as Step. The newest menu, however, is the Team Info. Team Info shows us our total percentage of both team popularity as well as team completion. Those are the 2 percentages alongside the top. Popularity increases by accomplishing tasks in the mode and has no limit to the percentage that it can be, while the team completion increases specifically from auditions, but also from a new option we'll talk about in a minute, which is team training. This can max out to 100%. In a kind of bizarre twist, both of these parameters go up faster the less characters are on your team. So I don't know why it is necessarily designed this way, but essentially the smaller your unit is, the faster you'll be able to gain popularity and completion. The larger your team is, the slower it will be. This can result in slightly slower stat gains for larger teams and fast stat gains for small teams. With the pink button down here, we can also choose to adjust our team. We can drag around characters to rearrange them in the positions that we want, which will matter later on, or we can choose to dismiss them by tapping the blue button. Do note that if you dismiss somebody, you will not be able to reselect them again. However, you will have the opportunity later to re-scout another character for your team if you have an open space in Seasons 2 and 3. Moving over to the planner, we now have our other options available to us. We still have the ability to participate in lessons and work sites as much as usual. Our second tab is auditions. These are all the available auditions in Season 2, and each of them have their own requirements here and there, as well as percent chances to be cleared. The higher your stats, the more abilities you have, the more likely it will be that you'll be able to pass an audition. So make sure to bolster up your stats if you want to have a better chance at clearing each audition. Auditions are very important because they provide stats to everything and sometimes have a focus, but also grant you a fan count as per usual, as well as plus 10 affection. Regardless of whatever audition you do, as long as you pass the audition, you will gain plus 10 affection. Remember how I mentioned earlier that bringing along items to raise your affection are mostly pointless, and morning communes are also kind of in a similar boat. If you are balancing your time correctly, you'll be able to gather up a lot of affection really quickly, meaning you may even get to max memory level without too much issue. The final option down here is team training. This is a new option that allows you to spend the advice that you've gathered up in order to build up the strength of your idols. The type of lessons that you have available are determined by what you have participated in so far. So, certain things will only be open depending on what you have done. Initially, you're going to have access to things like vocal, dance, and visual, as you would expect, and also a rest option. This will allow you to recover 50 points of stamina, and also grants you plus 10 to your affection. The percentage underneath each of them represents the amount of advice you have in some capacity and how much you'll be able to actually gain from it. The higher the percentage, max 100, the more points you'll be able to gain. And you will also see that completing all of these team trainings, or at least individual team trainings, depending on the percentage, will increase your team's overall completion, as mentioned earlier. If you have a missing spot on your team and decide to participate in specific auditions, mostly ones pertaining to unlocking unique abilities, you will see this character icon on the top right. After completing this audition, you will have the ability to scout another idol. This option only shows up if you have a missing slot, so do keep that in mind if you're wondering why the icon is or is not there at that time. One final thing about team training for now. Some of them will be unlocked after clearing specific conditions, such as working in certain lesson rooms multiple times, or having a certain amount of stats, or even having a certain memory level. So there are going to be more that unlock as you progress throughout the mode. Some of them have some very good effects, some of them are not so good. But as you get more comfortable with the mode, you'll be able to access some of these and see some very, very plentiful stat growth. At the end of auditions, as mentioned before, you'll get your plus 10 affection and fan count, but you also get a guaranteed best advice for every audition that you clear. Gathering up best advice can be very handy, especially on weeks where maybe, for example, your lessons are not very plentiful. Depending on the type of run you're doing, you may also be doing a lot of auditions, so you'll be building up these best advice very quickly. And here's your example of clearing a special live that allows you to re-scout a character. Note that characters that you have dismissed will be marked blue and will not be able to be picked. You can also choose to, if you do not want to add any additional characters, to just click the blue button up here in order to dismiss adding on an extra character to your team. After the final week of Season 2 and 3, the stage will shift towards the training camp, as you can see from the background change. The camp will last for 2 weeks exactly, during which all lesson rooms and work sites will have their levels increased by 2. alongside having all their stat points increased for a fair amount. As a downside, each room now also costs a lot more stamina compared to usual, and the trouble chances also increase unless you have characters that have Trouble Guard. So do bear in mind that your lessons are going to be a lot more demanding of you during the training weeks. Team training will also see a boost as well, and will allow you to get some pretty beefy stats for you if you have the amount of tokens for it. One of the most notable team trainings that you can access is known as the Comprehensive Training, which is unlocked by having a total stat uncap of 1,000 in vocal, dance, and visual at the same time. This provides you the largest overall growth and is tantamount to creating a really strong idol in this mode. It is highly recommended that you build up your stats in a way that allows you to access this. After camp in Season 2 and 3, you'll be invited to the Target Live, or Goal Live depending on which translation you're looking at. Each of these provide a unique ability for the position of idol that you intend to make. There is a performance for every single position, so vocal, dance, visual, leader, and center, each having their own overall point gain depending on which position you go for. So vocal provides way more vocal alongside SP, dance is dance and SP, visual and SP, leader is all stats and SP, while center is a lot of SP and a lot of mental. Just like with all other auditions, your percent chance is determined based on the strength of your character, so make sure to beef up your characters if you are aiming for a specific position. Now, for successfully clearing a live in Season 2, you will have access to a stronger version of it at the end of Season 3, the Plus version of the Target Live. This provides even more stats as well as even more affection. So, if you are focusing in on that specific position, it is certainly worth your time to do so, especially because you will unlock unique abilities for clearing it. On top of that, though not mentioned earlier, team training also has the ability to unlock specific abilities depending on where your stats are or which ones you specifically clear. For example, earlier we had a team training that is unlocked by reaching memory level 3. Upon clearing it, you unlock an ability that grants you a plus to your memory gauge gain, which is very useful. Otherwise, once you enter Season 3, the flow is more or less the same. You have another 8 weeks to participate in auditions and tear it through. But now there are going to be new auditions with new abilities available for you. So do make sure to balance your time between lessons, auditions, or whatever else you may need in order to improve your character to their best potential. Just like in other game modes, there are going to be some auditions that require you to have a certain amount of fans in order for it to unlock. So if you're wondering why certain auditions are not available to you, it's because you'll still need to reach a fan count before you're able to unlock them. For those looking to gather fans early on, Season 3 has access to a 130,000 that is for the most part accessible early, as long as you have, I believe, at least 50,000 fans. Then you'll have later ones that are unlocked once you reach over 250, and once you reach 500,000, you'll be able to participate in all auditions at least. After the final Target Live, the produce mode is over and you'll be brought to your results screen. Now, there's a couple things that you want to check out here that are new for the mode specifically. If we check out this menu here, you'll get to see your overall team performance as well as that team completion that we talked about, so your popularity and your team completion. If we check out this menu on the right, this brings us to our custom link appeal. On the left, you can see what our link appeal is currently doing. So, because this is a Rinze card, this links up with Hokura. However, if we decide to click this check mark and hit OK, what will happen is that now our link appeal has been changed to represent the characters that we brought along for the ride. The order of your characters is determined from left to right, from that page that we saw earlier if we look over here. And it is picked at the beginning, not after you adjust it. So, that means that if you want to have, say, your first character to be, in this case it was Asahi, then that means that regardless of wherever Asahi is positioned, Asahi will be the first character to be in that link. So if you're making, say, a 3-member link, it's important to decide who you pick first and second. If you're building a 5-member, it doesn't necessarily matter, but it certainly matters for characters with very small links, for example, certain Nocchill cards that have a smaller link appeal than normal, or cards like Shees that only link with one other character. Make sure to pick that ideal character first before deciding on any of your other characters. I believe how it also then works is that if you dismiss said character and bring along somebody else, then whoever was next in line will take that position. It is a little bit weird, and it does lead to some specific types of link appeals being kind of broken, but that is the nature of the mode. Otherwise, you will have the ability to spend your points as you go, like any other mode. You can redeem any points that you haven't used already, and you can spend any SP that you have not either. And considering that this mode is very plentiful with SP, once you get the hang of it, you will have a lot of things unlocked in a proper run. Here's a couple other things to go over. As mentioned before, one of the most important forms of team training is known as comprehensive training, unlocked by having 1,000 total stats in all of vocal, dance, and visual at once. It's recommended to clear this condition by gathering best advice as much as possible. Room discussion is another form of team training that is unlocked once your memory appeal reaches level 3, and is available as early as Season 2. This, when cleared, provides an ability for plus 3% memory gauge gain, and also unlocks Room Discussion Plus. While the stat gain from Room Discussion Plus is not particularly good as it focuses entirely on mental and is kind of a waste of points, it does grant you an ability that gives you plus 5 to your memory gauge gain alongside plus 3 to your appeal strength as an effect. During Say Halo, idols can clear hidden conditions to unlock keywords, which grant a special ability for your know-how book made after the run. These keywords can include things like Utahime, Pro Dancer, and Top Model, which are obtained for reaching 2,000 in a respective stat. So if you reach 2,000 vocal, you'll unlock Utahime as a keyword. You'll unlock Pro Dancer for 2,000 dance, as well as Top Model for 2,000 visual. There is also a final ability that is unlocked by having all 3 of these keywords together, which grants a massive plus 15 appeal strength boost, which is very good. A very important point about these keywords: while you can unlock them during the produce run, you do not actually get access to them until after the run is over. So that means that if you do get that certain ability, like let's say you unlock Utahime on your character, they will not have it from that run, but it can be passed on to a know-how book. So you take your Utahime and pass it on through Step to make a really good step book with the Utahime ability. Then you repeat this for, say, Pro Dancer. Then you get the Pro Dancer and Utahime together, and then go get the Top Model keyword and get all 3 of them combined onto one book. That way you can gather up all 3 of the very powerful effects and possibly get that plus 15% appeal strength if you reach 2,000 in a stat. That is the requirement for that ability to unlock, and so it will not even activate if you are below that but have bought the ability with points. So do keep that in mind. It does encourage you to juggle between Step and Halo in order to generate a super powerful book. And that's more or less it for the guide on Say Halo. There are some other aspects of it that are a little weird to wrap your head around at first, but otherwise the mode is relatively simple and it's relatively short, meaning it'll be very easy to tear through once you get a better understanding of the mode, which just comes from practice. It does, like I mentioned before, mean you have to juggle between Step and Say Halo in order to make that super good know-how book, but with enough time and effort, you'll be able to pull it off for sure. So with that, thank you so much, as always, for watching. If you have any questions about the mode, or have your own form of advice, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'm sure the other producers would love to hear what you're able to bring for this mode. It is certainly causing quite the splash in Grade Fests, for better and worse. So, next video will be a playthrough of Say Halo. Our goal is to try to get 2,000 in every stat, so let's look forward to that together. Till then, I've been Cho, thank you so much as always for watching, Have a wonderful rest of your day.